tag and the Trinity. And so what Frame talks about here is that some have claimed that presuppositional approach is merely theistic, as in kind of a general theism, as opposed to distinctly Christian. And so this is probably more of a critique to what some people view classical argumentation is you develop a theistic general God point of view. You argue with the Kalam, talk about the personality. You try and build in qualities of the Christian God into it because that's what you're kind of going to slyly argue for. And that's part one. And then part two, you definitely get the Christian message by appealing to something like the resurrection and the details of the resurrection. And then evidentialism tends to focus on that part.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, God is the first cause. Okay. And now we got God. Now we move into the Christian message, or we try to, narrow down more on how God is a personal God, something like that. But yeah, the classical method starts with proving the existence of God first as a first cause or intelligent designer or something like that, the greatest possible being. And then it moves to the Christian message and saying that Christianity then is the kind of best approach to view that God. So theism in general is just as there's a God that exists, right? And so what Frame here is talking about is mere theism, and some folks say the criticism of the tag argument is that it just defends mere theism. And so he thinks it goes further than that.
Right. And so the critique is, well, just the Muslim can do it, the Hindu can do it, and just says, I'm just going to assume the truth of my presuppositions and just argue in the same manner as Christians do. And so that's kind of the critique here that he's responding to. But he says, but there is an argument that we laid out in chapter 2 that God must be one in many if he is to account for the one in the many nature of the world. And there's a short clip that I can put in here talking about the issue of the one in the many. And so he says that while he might not be able to argue for kind of the reason for precisely why God has to be a Trinity, that his argument shows that God has to be multi-personal. But I will say that there's a really good book by Brant and Bosserman, and here's a mouthful for a title because you need all the subscripts, is The Trinity and the Vindication of Christian Paradox, an Interpretation and Refinement of the Theological Approach of Cornelius Van Til. And so that's the name of the book. And in here, Bosserman actually argues why God has to be three. So Frame's book came out way before Bosserman's does, but Bosserman does take on that claim and talks about it in there. So I wanted to throw out another book in case you wanted to do some book collecting of why this must be the case. So Frame is saying, no, actually, the Christian version of tag must work in a Trinitarian point of view because it does get over that hump of the issue of the one in the many nature of the world and the personality of God being one and three kind of shows that multi-personal nature of him, and then explains the makeup of the universe in similar fashion.
Right. And so he says, maybe it doesn't get us exactly to three, right? The Trinity, right. But it gets us to a multi-personal type of being, right? And so he says that's far further than just a basic mere theism that a God exists.